Hey guys, what is going on? This is Wrestlelamia, back with another episode. The news never stops and neither does Wrestlelamia. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including the participants in AEW Dynamite's upcoming Blood and Guts double cage match, whether it's healthy for Jake Roberts to return to wrestling, fallout from Sunday's Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, Ryback points out the holes in WWE's wellness policy, Triple H's big award, Mick Foley's favorite character, and more. Elimination Chamber fallout. Sunday's Elimination Chamber event featured some excellent matches. Check out our Elimination Chamber recap and analysis video for more details, and set things up for some big storylines leading into WrestleMania 36, which is less than 4 weeks away. One of the biggest storylines, of course, is Seth Rollins' rivalry with Kevin Owens, but there's also the question of whether the Monday Night Messiah's faction might split up. Rollins was furious with Murphy after their loss to the Street Profits, and it's arguable that the AOP may be getting tired of being nothing more than Rollins' flunkies when they could be competing for Tag Team Gold. On a related note, the Tag Team Elimination Chamber saw some tension between the Usos and the New Day as they focused on beating each other when they could have eliminated The Miz and Morrison. Is there still animosity between both teams, and will this lead to a renewal of their past rivalry? Arguably, the biggest fallout is how the WWE is going to handle the situation with its women's division. As Wrestlelamia discussed in our Elimination Chamber recap, the Philly fans were unusually quiet for the event, but particularly so during the Women's Elimination Chamber match. The match was a glorified squash with Baszler dispatching of all of her opponents in a match that many felt was boring, particularly for a main event. Fans were seen leaving the arena during the match, and according to at least one report, there was a CM Punk chant at one point during the match. It may be Women's Month, but that wasn't enough to get the fans invested in the main event. What does this mean for the Becky vs. Baszler match for WrestleMania? Finally, Kevin Owens praised his real-life friend Sami Zayn for his big Intercontinental Championship win. KO tweeted, "You can complain all you want about how he won it or his attitude, but Sami being Intercontinental Champion is long overdue. The fact that he won it after growing hair that rivals Wayne Gretzky's in his heyday makes it worth the wait though. I'm very proud of you, Sami Zayn." In case you're wondering why Zayn defeated Braun Strowman, be sure to check out Wrestlemania's latest video, breaking things down. Who's fighting in Dynamite's Blood and Guts match? AEW's 25th March edition of Dynamite is set to feature a Blood and Guts double steel cage match, about believed to be reminiscent of the classic War Games match created by Cody Rhodes' dad Dusty. Now, PW Insider reports we know who will participate in the match, with the big bout featuring the Elite, Cody, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Adam Page, battling the Inner Circle, Chris Jericho, Jake Hager, Sammy Guevara, Ortiz, and Santana. This one could be a bloodbath if TNT sanctions the use of blading as it did for the Cody vs. Wardlow cage match. Vince McMahon sighting. As fans know, Vince McMahon hasn't spent much time backstage at SmackDown, but Fightful Select reports the WWE Kingpin showed up at this week's show. Vince McMahon was at this past week's SmackDown. He rarely showed up there after Thanksgiving. The real question is whether Vince pulled his usual last-minute rewrites to the show. Fightful Select reports one match was cut from the show. The word backstage was that Drake Maverick was said to actually have been set for a match with Daniel Bryan last week. No word on whether Vince cut the match, or for that matter, whether he was just in Buffalo for some chicken wings. Rumored women's WrestleMania matches. With WrestleMania needing to fill 8 or more hours of airtime, you never know what matches could end up at the WWE's Show of Shows. While it's likely that most, if not all, of the WWE's championships will be defended, we're hearing rumors of some interesting matches, both for the SmackDown Women's Championship and the Women's Tag Team Championship. Remember those? TalkSport's Alex McCarthy recently tweeted, "A source tells me the plan for the SmackDown Women's title match at WrestleMania 36 is a 6-pack challenge right now. Bayley vs. Sasha vs. Naomi vs. Lacey Evans vs. Carmella. That's 5 of the 6 names." McCarthy also discussed the women's tag titles. "I asked if Alexa Bliss was the other, but I'm told Bliss and Cross will challenge Kabuki Warriors in addition to Divas of Doom in a 3-way tag. Sasha vs. Bayley was the original plan, but I'm told Sasha's injury caused them to change course." Based on McCarthy's tweet, it seems that Bayley and Banks want to face each other, but not at the Showcase of the Immortals. The source speculates Bayley and Sasha would prefer to hold off their major singles pay-per-view match too. Both women have told me before that they wouldn't get the time they need on a Mania card, so I can definitely believe that. Do you think this means Bayley will retain at Mania and go on to defend the SmackDown Women's Championship against Banks? Or could the two feud in a non-title series? Do you think Bayley should drop the title at WrestleMania? Be sure to leave your comment below. Is Jake Roberts' return to wrestling healthy? WWE Hall of Famer Jake the Snake Roberts shocked the wrestling world when he showed up on AEW Dynamite, confronting Cody Rhodes and promising he was bringing in a wrestler to take Rhodes' piece of the pie. While Roberts seems to have successfully battled his personal demons after decades of substance abuse struggles, is a return to wrestling right for his continued sobriety? It's a question Diamond Dave Meltzer discussed in the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Meltzer discussed that he's heard nothing but good things about Roberts over the last few years, but that, "I think wrestling would be the worst thing for him to do at this point, but really, it's the old business where he'd be headed for a fall. The newer business, or at least this specific company, isn't riddled with all the people who will put him into the rabbit hole. Still, you're always taking a risk with Roberts. That said, the man can cut a promo when he's on and motivated, and he was both in his debut. Ultimately, the responsibility is on Roberts to handle things. If he feels that the wrestling environment will trigger his addictive personality, he definitely needs to back out, regardless of the fans welcoming him back and the rush from the reaction. For some wrestlers, the sound of the crowd is one addiction they can't overcome." Mick Foley talks favorite face of Foley. The three faces of Foley always had fans guessing which version of Mrs. Foley's baby boy would show up in the ring. Recently, TMZ Sports caught up with Foley and asked which of his three incarnations, Dude Love, Mankind, or Cactus Jack, were his favorite, with Mick answering, "Favorite gimmick? I'm gonna go with Corporate Dude Love, where I got to dance with Mr. McMahon. Yeah, well, that's the first time I've ever given that answer, but today's answer, Corporate Dude Love. Had a couple epic matches with Stone Cold Steve Austin, too." As good as that character was, once Mick was done fooling around, he talked about his true favorite. "Yeah, Mankind as a whole, especially the latter-day Mankind that teamed up with a little-known entity known as Dwayne The Rock Johnson. We did some great things together." Foley has been a busy man following his retirement from the Squared Circle, helping out a number of charitable causes, continuing his writing career, and making occasional WWE appearances. Brie Bella's WrestleMania moment. 2020 WWE Hall of Famer Brie Bella appeared on the recent episode of WWE Backstage, looking back at a WrestleMania moment between her husband Daniel Bryan and a WWE legend that touched her heart. "Bryan and I were walking down the hall, and the Ultimate Warrior stopped Bryan and he was like, 'Hey, I really have to tell you, you really blow me away,' and he just went off. And just how sincere and the way he said it to Bryan, I don't know, it's just one of those moments. Here we are in a hallway, in a hotel, just all of us minding your own business, and there's no one around." This amazing meeting left a mark on Brie, with her saying, "It felt like for Bryan it was an incredible moment, but I think as his wife, to me it was something I'd remember for the rest of my life. It brought me goosebumps and kind of made my eyes teary. It was awesome." It must have been an exhilarating experience for both superstars to meet with one of the biggest names from the rock and wrestling era, even though the Warrior and Bryan wrestled much different styles. How Kenny Omega differentiates himself from other wrestlers. The wrestling world features incredible competition, not only in the ring, but for performers to try and stand out above their colleagues. One star who has worked hard to establish his own identity is AEW's Kenny Omega, who spoke with Bleacher Report's Jonathan Snowden about how he separates himself from most wrestlers. "A lot of wrestlers are wrestling fans at heart. I'm not necessarily a fan anymore. I'm a fan of TV dramas, I'm a fan of video games, and I'm a fan of movies. I like the way that those forms of media are laid out to attract the fan. That's my study material for how I put together a storyline or a match." Omega's love for video games is well known, but how does this and his fondness for films translate into a unique wrestling identity? Omega continued, "Yes, I'm athletic and I can do cool moves, and I try to be original with the way I perform them, but I feel the way that I put things together is different from the average wrestler because the average wrestler is just that. He's just a wrestler. He's a wrestler who wants to be a wrestler. I'm wrestling as a job, but trying to tell human stories to pull at your heartstrings." Do you think there's any validity to Omega's statement, especially considering how many wrestlers work hard to create their own identity? Fans need to look no further than some of Omega's fellow wrestlers to see individuals who work hard to carve out a spot on the roster, whether it's Orange Cassidy, Darby Allin, or Chris Jericho, a competitor who has remade himself several times throughout his career. This week's Ryback Rant. Welcome to Ryback's Rant, the recurring feature where Wrestlelamia looks at former WWE superstar Ryback's latest rant on the WWE. In this case, the WWE wellness policy. During his podcast, Ryback argued, "This is where there's holes in the drug testing with WWE. When a guy tests positive, the guy should be suspended and it's announced immediately. That shows that the drug testing company is a bullshit thing. That should be enforced immediately. Those part-timers who come in, these guys aren't getting drug tested and it's not fair to the full-time talent. The WWE's failure to test part-timers is a glaring hole in the policy and raises questions what performance-enhancing drugs might be used by these stars to help get them in ring shape or keep them in ring shape. A related question is what counts as a part-timer. While Brock Lesnar rarely appeared on TV, the Beast has appeared much more frequently after retiring from UFC. Should Lesnar be tested?" Ryback shared his experience with the wellness policy. "It was 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year, somewhere in that range. It was quarterly. I think there was a period where I went 4 to 5 months without getting tested, and that was the longest ever. Right after I got tested every time, they knew I was clean, and I wasn't doing marijuana or anything like that at the time. When you're constantly getting clean tests, they're not as concerned. But the guys who get popped for weed get tested all the time. If you do fail for PEDs, you're probably going to be tested a lot more." Ryback's experience may not match that of the current WWE wellness policy, but WWE's testing policy has been criticized for years, whether it's the part-timer issue or the exception that allows wrestlers to use performance-enhancing drugs if prescribed by a doctor for rehabilitation. Looking at some of the WWE's superstars, it's difficult to believe their musculature is based on regular exercise and a healthy diet. Scary Sherri shower story. Sherri Martel was one of wrestling's most interesting personalities, and while she was well known for her sweet side, check out our Final Bell The Last Days of Sherri Martel for more about sensational Sherri, she was no one to be trifled with, something Dusty Rhodes fan turned valet Sweet Sapphire found out. During an episode of Something to Wrestle With, Bruce Pritchard shared a funny story about Sherri and Sapphire. "There was a period where the stuff that Sapphire wore, she wore every night, so they would wrestle every night and Sapphire wouldn't shower. Sherri and Sapphire would travel together and Sherri told her, 'Hey, you gotta wash your gear, you gotta wash your clothes, and you need to bathe.' I think Sapphire was just self-conscious about taking a shower at the arena in front of Sherri. That's the only thing that we could think of. I remember Miss Elizabeth trying to mediate that. She asked me to mediate it. Sherri took it upon herself and said, 'You're not going to shower? I'm taking you to the shower.' Sherri dragged her into the shower, turned the shower on, and proceeded to help her bathe." This wouldn't be the first time a wrestler was forced to bathe after repeated requests to clean up their act, no pun intended. Triple H received Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations to Triple H for receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award from Arnold Schwarzenegger at this year's Arnold Classic. WrestleZone's Alex Santamaria noted, "By accepting the honor, the game joined such illustrious company as Sylvester Stallone, Lou Ferrigno, and Jack LaLanne." The WWE tweeted about this achievement, "Turn your dreams into goals and work hard to achieve them, and whenever possible, inspire. Whenever possible, give back. Triple H after being presented the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Arnold Classic." Schwarzenegger entered WWE's 2015 Hall of Fame in its celebrity wing. Well guys, there you have it, the wildest wrestling news stories and rumors you need to know. What do you think about these wild stories? Be sure to leave your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you next time for some more wrestling content.